I watched my sister Natalie cradle my 6-month-old daughter Emma during what should have been our family's first Christmas morning together. But something in her possessive embrace and the way she whispered, "My precious girl," made my maternal instincts scream that this was more than typical aunt-affection. What I discovered over the following weeks about her calculated plan to claim Emma as her own would shatter every assumption I had about family loyalty and the lengths people will go to steal what they cannot have. But it was the courtroom confrontation 18 months later where I would finally reclaim not just my daughter's identity, but my own power, in ways that would leave Natalie with nothing but the legal consequences of her devastating betrayal. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Rebecca Martinez, and until December 25th of last year, I believed I had achieved everything I had ever dreamed of. At 32 years old, I was a successful pediatric nurse at Denver General Hospital, married to my college sweetheart David Martinez, and the proud mother of the most beautiful 6-month-old daughter, who had transformed our world in ways we never imagined possible. Emma Rose Martinez had arrived on a perfect June morning after what felt like a lifetime of hoping and trying. David and I had struggled with fertility challenges for nearly 4 years, enduring countless medical appointments, treatments, and the heartbreak of 2 early miscarriages before Emma finally blessed our lives. The moment I held her tiny fingers in mine, I knew that every tear, every disappointment, and every moment of doubt had been preparing us for this perfect little person who would complete our family. Our home in the Highlands neighborhood of Denver had been carefully prepared for Emma's arrival. David, who worked as a software engineer for a renewable energy company, had spent months converting our spare bedroom into the most enchanting nursery. He had painted the walls a soft lavender, installed custom shelving for books and keepsakes, and even built a rocking chair where I could nurse Emma while watching the sunrise over the Rocky Mountains through the large east-facing window. The nursery represented more than just a beautiful room for our daughter. It symbolized hope fulfilled, dreams realized, and the beginning of the family we had prayed for during those difficult years of fertility struggles. Every detail had been chosen with love and intention, from the mobile of butterflies that danced above Emma's crib to the collection of children's books that lined the shelves, waiting for bedtime stories that would create memories to last a lifetime. My relationship with my younger sister Natalie had always been complicated, but I had hoped that Emma's arrival would bring us closer together. Natalie was 28 years old and had been married to her husband Marcus Thompson for 3 years. They lived in a beautiful home in Cherry Hills Village, one of Denver's most exclusive neighborhoods, where Marcus worked as a corporate attorney specializing in mergers and acquisitions. Despite their financial success and seemingly perfect life, Natalie and Marcus had been unable to have children. They had been trying for nearly as long as David and I had, but their fertility journey had been even more challenging. Multiple rounds of in vitro fertilization had failed, and they had experienced the devastating loss of a pregnancy at 20 weeks that had left them both emotionally shattered. I had tried to be supportive during their struggles, sharing my own experiences with infertility and offering whatever comfort I could provide. However, I had begun to notice changes in Natalie's behavior after Emma was born that made me increasingly uncomfortable. Her visits to our home became more frequent, and she would often arrive unannounced with gifts for Emma and requests to help with feeding or diaper changes. At first, I had been grateful for her interest in being an involved aunt. Natalie was naturally good with children, and her enthusiasm for spending time with Emma seemed like a positive development in our relationship. She would often volunteer to babysit when David and I needed to run errands or wanted to enjoy a brief date night, and she appeared genuinely devoted to Emma's well-being and development. However, as the months passed, I began to notice aspects of Natalie's behavior that troubled me. She would refer to Emma as our baby when speaking to friends and family members, and she had started posting photographs of herself with Emma on social media with captions that suggested a closer relationship than the typical aunt-niece dynamic. When people would comment on how beautiful her baby looked, Natalie would not correct the misunderstanding. More concerning was Natalie's tendency to make decisions about Emma's care without consulting David or me. She had purchased a complete wardrobe of clothes for Emma and had insisted on keeping them at her house for the times when Emma visited. She had also set up a nursery in her guest bedroom, complete with a crib, changing table, and all the equipment necessary for extended stays. When I had expressed concerns about these arrangements, Natalie had dismissed my worries as new mother anxiety and had assured me that she simply wanted to be prepared to help whenever we needed support. She pointed out that having a fully equipped nursery at her house would make it easier for her to provide overnight care if David and I ever wanted to take a weekend trip, or if Emma became ill and needed additional attention. The rational explanations Natalie provided for her behavior made it difficult for me to articulate my growing unease. On the surface, everything she was doing could be interpreted as the actions of a loving and devoted aunt who wanted to be involved in her niece's life. However, my maternal instincts were telling me that something about the intensity and possessiveness of her attachment to Emma was not healthy or appropriate. David had been less concerned about Natalie's behavior than I was, largely because he interpreted her involvement as helpful rather than intrusive. As a new father who was still adjusting to the demands of parenthood while maintaining his demanding career, he appreciated having additional family support and saw Natalie's enthusiasm as a blessing rather than a source of concern. "Rebecca, I think you might be reading too much into Natalie's actions," he had said during one of our conversations about my concerns. "She's been through such a difficult time with their fertility struggles, and I think being involved with Emma brings her joy and helps her feel connected to family. As long as she's not undermining our authority as parents, I think her involvement is actually beneficial for everyone." David's perspective reflected his generally trusting nature and his desire to see the best in people, particularly family members. He had always gotten along well with Natalie and had been supportive of her and Marcus during their fertility challenges. From his viewpoint, Natalie's devotion to Emma represented healing and hope, rather than anything problematic or concerning. The situation became more complex as we approached Emma's first Christmas. This milestone felt incredibly significant to David and me, representing not just our daughter's first holiday celebration, but also the culmination of years of hoping and dreaming about the family traditions we would create together. We had planned every detail of Christmas morning, from the special breakfast we would prepare to the photographs we would take of Emma experiencing the magic of the holiday for the first time. Natalie had expressed strong interest in being part of Emma's first Christmas celebration, and we had invited her and Marcus to join us for Christmas morning. The plan was for them to arrive around 10 o'clock, after David and I had enjoyed some quiet time with Emma and had the opportunity to capture those precious first moments of her experiencing Christmas morning. However, as Christmas approached, Natalie's requests for involvement became increasingly specific and demanding. She wanted to be present when Emma opened her first Christmas gifts. She insisted on bringing additional presents that she wanted to give Emma personally, and she suggested that we should coordinate our photography efforts to ensure that she was included in all the important moments of the day. While these requests might have seemed reasonable on the surface, they represented a level of involvement that felt inappropriate for an aunt, regardless of how close she was to our family. Christmas morning was supposed to be an intimate time for our immediate family, and Natalie's insistence on being central to the experience felt like an intrusion into moments that should have belonged to David, Emma, and me. The tension reached a breaking point during a family dinner at our parents' house in early December. Our mother, Patricia Santos, had been thrilled about becoming a grandmother and had been planning her own special Christmas celebration for Emma. During the dinner conversation, Natalie had announced that she and Marcus were planning to host Christmas Eve at their house and that they expected Emma to spend the night so that she could wake up on Christmas morning in their beautifully decorated nursery. The suggestion had shocked me speechless. The idea that Emma would spend her first Christmas morning anywhere other than her own home with her own parents seemed so fundamentally inappropriate that I could not believe Natalie had made the suggestion seriously. However, her earnest expression and detailed planning for the overnight visit made it clear that she was completely serious about the proposal. "Natalie, Emma is only 6 months old," I had said, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable. "She's never spent a night away from home, and Christmas morning is something David and I have been looking forward to sharing with her in our own house, as a family." Natalie's response had revealed the depth of her disconnect from appropriate boundaries and her inability to recognize David and me as Emma's primary family unit. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Rebecca, Emma loves staying at our house, and our nursery is absolutely perfect for Christmas morning," she had replied, with a tone that suggested I was being unreasonable. "Marcus and I have put so much thought into making it magical for her, and it would mean the world to us to wake up with her on Christmas morning. Besides, you and David can come over first thing to be part of the celebration. The conversation had continued for nearly an hour, with various family members offering opinions and attempting to mediate between Natalie's expectations and my determination to maintain appropriate boundaries around Emma's first Christmas. Our parents had tried to remain neutral, but it was clear that they were uncomfortable with the level of conflict that had emerged over what should have been a joyful family celebration. David had been supportive of my position during the dinner conversation, but I could see that he was also uncomfortable with the family drama that was developing around Christmas plans. He valued harmony in family relationships, and was naturally inclined to find compromises that would satisfy everyone involved, even when those compromises might not be in our best interests as Emma's parents. The dinner had ended without resolution, with Natalie clearly disappointed and frustrated by my refusal to consider her Christmas Eve proposal. However, rather than accepting my decision and working to find alternative ways to be involved in Emma's first Christmas celebration, she had begun what I would later recognize as a campaign to undermine my authority as Emma's mother, and to position herself as an equally important parental figure in Emma's life. Over the following weeks, Natalie had made several comments to family members and mutual friends that portrayed me as an overly anxious and controlling new mother who was preventing her from having a meaningful relationship with her niece. She had suggested that my concerns about her involvement were rooted in postpartum depression or new mother insecurity rather than legitimate boundaries about appropriate family relationships. These characterizations of my behavior had been particularly hurtful because they played into fears and insecurities that many new mothers experience about their parenting decisions and their ability to balance family relationships with their protective instincts. Natalie's comments had the effect of making me question whether my concerns were justified or whether I was indeed being unreasonable about her desire to be involved in Emma's life. The psychological manipulation inherent in Natalie's approach was sophisticated and effective. By positioning herself as the victim of my unreasonable restrictions and portraying me as an unstable new mother, she was able to generate sympathy and support from family members who did not fully understand the extent of her inappropriate behavior. As Christmas Day approached, I found myself caught between my determination to protect the integrity of Emma's first Christmas celebration and my desire to maintain family harmony. The stress of the ongoing conflict with Natalie was affecting my enjoyment of what should have been one of the most magical times in Emma's young life, and I was beginning to doubt my own perceptions of the situation. However, my maternal instincts continued to warn me that something about Natalie's behavior was fundamentally wrong and potentially dangerous for Emma's well-being. The intensity of her attachment, her inability to respect appropriate boundaries, and her willingness to manipulate family relationships to achieve her goals suggested problems that went far beyond typical aunt enthusiasm or even grief over her own fertility challenges. Christmas morning would prove that those instincts were not only correct but had actually underestimated the extent of Natalie's dangerous obsession with claiming Emma as her own child. The events of that day would shatter my understanding of family loyalty and begin a journey toward discovering the truth about my sister's calculated plan to steal not just Emma's first Christmas but Emma herself. The beautiful nursery David had created, the carefully planned Christmas morning traditions, and the innocent trust I had placed in my sister's love for our family would all become casualties of a betrayal so profound that it would take months to fully understand its scope and implications. But it would also become the foundation for discovering strength, courage, and determination that I never knew I possessed, ultimately leading to a confrontation in a courtroom where justice would finally be served and my family's future would be secured. The morning of December 25th began with the soft, golden light of winter sunrise filtering through the nursery window where Emma slept peacefully in her crib. David and I had awakened early, filled with the excitement of new parents experiencing their first Christmas morning with their child. We had planned every moment of this day with careful attention to creating memories that would last a lifetime, never imagining that those plans would be shattered by a betrayal so calculated and devastating that it would forever change our understanding of family loyalty. David made coffee while I prepared Emma's morning bottle, both of us moving quietly through our home in the peaceful anticipation that comes with significant milestones. The Christmas tree in our living room stood beautifully decorated with ornaments we had collected during our 7 years together, including the special baby's first Christmas ornament we had purchased specifically for Emma. Wrapped presents sat beneath the tree, each one chosen with love and care for our daughter's first holiday celebration. The plan had been simple and perfect. David and I would have quiet time with Emma, watching her experience the lights and colors of Christmas morning for the first time. We would take photographs of her tiny hands reaching for wrapping paper, capture her expressions of wonder at the twinkling tree lights, and create the intimate family memories that would become the foundation of her childhood Christmas traditions. Natalie and Marcus were expected to arrive at 10 o'clock, giving us nearly 3 hours of private family time before sharing the celebration with extended family. However, at 7:30 in the morning, while Emma was still finishing her bottle and David was preparing the special Christmas breakfast we had planned, the doorbell rang insistently. The unexpected sound startled Emma, who began crying at the sudden interruption of her peaceful morning routine. David and I exchanged confused glances, neither of us expecting visitors at such an early hour on Christmas morning. When David opened the front door, Natalie stood on our doorstep dressed in an elaborate red Christmas dress that seemed more appropriate for an evening party than a morning family gathering. Her makeup was perfectly applied, her hair professionally styled, and she carried multiple shopping bags filled with wrapped presents. Behind her stood Marcus, looking uncomfortable and slightly embarrassed by the early arrival. "Merry Christmas," Natalie announced with forced enthusiasm, pushing past David into our living room without waiting for an invitation. I couldn't wait another moment to see Emma open her presents. "I brought coffee and pastries from that wonderful bakery downtown, and I have the most amazing gifts for our precious girl." The immediate presumption and intrusion represented by Natalie's unannounced early arrival was shocking, but it was her use of the phrase "our precious girl" that sent the first chill of genuine alarm through my consciousness. This was not the language of an enthusiastic aunt, but rather the possessive terminology of someone who viewed Emma as belonging to her in ways that transcended appropriate family relationships. David attempted to maintain politeness while establishing boundaries around our planned morning routine. "Natalie, we weren't expecting you until 10 o'clock. Rebecca and I wanted to have some quiet time with Emma this morning, before everyone arrived for the celebration." Natalie's response revealed the depth of her disconnect from appropriate boundaries and her inability to recognize our authority as Emma's parents. Rather than apologizing for the intrusion and offering to return at the agreed-upon time, she dismissed our concerns with a wave of her hand and began unpacking presents under our Christmas tree. "Oh, don't be silly," she said with a laugh that sounded forced and artificial. "Emma won't remember whether we opened presents at 7:30 or 10 o'clock. What matters is that we're all together as a family for her first Christmas. Besides, I have such wonderful surprises planned, and I've been awake since 5 o'clock with excitement." Marcus appeared genuinely uncomfortable with the situation and attempted to suggest that they could return later to respect our family time. However, Natalie immediately shut down his suggestion with a sharp look and a reminder that they had driven across town specifically to be part of Emma's first Christmas morning experience. The dynamic between Natalie and Marcus revealed patterns of control and manipulation that extended beyond her behavior toward Emma and our family. Marcus clearly recognized that the early arrival was inappropriate, but he had been conditioned to defer to Natalie's wishes rather than assert his own judgment about respectful behavior toward others. As Natalie continued arranging presents and making herself comfortable in our living room, I noticed that she had brought far more gifts than would be appropriate for an aunt to give her niece. The shopping bag she had carried contained dozens of wrapped packages, ranging from clothing and toys to what appeared to be expensive electronic items that seemed completely inappropriate for a 6-month-old child. More concerning was the nature of the gifts themselves, which became apparent as Natalie began insisting that Emma should open presents immediately, rather than waiting for David and me to complete our planned morning routine. The first package contained a complete Christmas outfit in Emma's exact size, suggesting that Natalie had been carefully monitoring Emma's growth and development. The second package contained a professional quality camera equipment, which Natalie explained was for documenting Emma's important milestones. "I want to make sure we capture every precious moment of Emma's childhood," Natalie explained while setting up the expensive camera equipment. "These early years go by so quickly, and I want to ensure that we have beautiful photographs to treasure forever." The implications of Natalie's gift choices and her language around documenting Emma's childhood were deeply troubling. The present suggested long-term planning and investment that went far beyond typical aunt-level involvement, while her assumption that she would be responsible for documenting Emma's milestones represented another violation of appropriate family boundaries. David and I attempted to maintain control over the morning's activities while accommodating Natalie's unexpected presence, but her behavior became increasingly presumptuous and controlling. She insisted on holding Emma while presents were opened, positioned herself prominently in all photographs, and made decisions about which gifts Emma should receive first without consulting us. When Emma became fussy due to the overstimulation and disruption of her normal routine, Natalie immediately assumed responsibility for comforting her, taking Emma from my arms without permission and beginning to walk around our living room in a manner that suggested ownership rather than assistance. There, precious girl," Natalie cooed while rocking Emma. "Aunt Natalie is here, and everything is going to be perfect for your first Christmas. We're going to make such beautiful memories together." The possessive language and behavior continued throughout the morning, with Natalie consistently positioning herself as Emma's primary caregiver while treating David and me as secondary participants in our own daughter's Christmas celebration. She made decisions about when Emma should eat, when she needed diaper changes, and what activities would be appropriate for her engagement with the Christmas festivities. Most disturbing was Natalie's tendency to speak to Emma in ways that suggested a deeper relationship than actually existed. She would whisper private comments about their special bond and make promises about future experiences they would share together. These conversations excluded David and me while creating an artificial intimacy that seemed designed to establish Natalie's importance in Emma's life. As the morning progressed, I began to notice that Natalie was documenting everything, with both her professional camera equipment and her smartphone, taking hundreds of photographs and videos that captured Emma's reactions to various Christmas activities. However, her documentation seemed focused on images that featured herself with Emma, rather than preserving memories of our family celebration. When I attempted to take some photographs of David and Emma together, Natalie immediately inserted herself into the shots, claiming that Emma was more comfortable when she was present and that the photographs would be more beautiful with her inclusion. This pattern continued throughout the morning, with Natalie finding ways to position herself prominently in every significant moment of Emma's first Christmas experience. The most alarming incident occurred when Emma needed a diaper change during the present opening activities. Rather than asking me to handle the task or offering to assist, Natalie simply announced that she would take care of it and began carrying Emma toward the stairs leading to the nursery. "I'll take care of this, Emma," she said in a tone that suggested authority rather than helpfulness. "We'll get you all cleaned up and comfortable so you can enjoy the rest of your special day." I immediately followed Natalie upstairs, my maternal instincts warning me that something about her behavior was fundamentally inappropriate. In the nursery, I watched as Natalie changed Emma's diaper with an efficiency and familiarity that suggested she had performed this task many times before. Her movements were confident and practiced, and she spoke to Emma in intimate tones that implied a level of caregiving involvement that went far beyond occasional babysitting. "You're such a good girl, Emma," Natalie whispered while cleaning and changing her. "Aunt Natalie loves taking care of you, and we have so many wonderful times ahead of us. You're going to love spending more time at my house, where we can have all the privacy we need for our special relationship." The language Natalie used while changing Emma's diaper was deeply disturbing, suggesting plans for increased involvement in private time that seemed completely inappropriate for an aunt-niece relationship. The reference to privacy and special relationship raised immediate red flags about Natalie's intentions and her understanding of appropriate boundaries with children. When we returned downstairs, Natalie continued her dominating behavior throughout the remainder of the Christmas morning activities. She insisted on feeding Emma her mid-morning bottle, made decisions about which toys Emma should play with, and positioned herself as the primary adult responsible for Emma's entertainment and care. David appeared increasingly uncomfortable with Natalie's behavior, but he struggled to address the situation without creating family conflict on Christmas morning. His natural tendency toward conflict avoidance was being exploited by Natalie's willingness to create awkward situations that would be difficult to address directly without appearing ungracious or unreasonable. The situation reached a crisis point when Natalie announced that she and Marcus would be taking Emma to their house for the afternoon portion of the Christmas celebration. She explained that they had prepared special activities and had invited several friends to meet Emma, claiming that it was important for Emma to begin building relationships beyond our immediate family. Emma needs to experience different environments and meet different people, Natalie declared while beginning to pack Emma's diaper bag with supplies from our nursery. Marcus and I have such a beautiful Christmas celebration planned at our house, and our friends are so excited to meet our precious girl. The presumption inherent in this announcement was staggering. Natalie was not asking permission to take Emma to her house. She was announcing her intention to do so while assuming that David and I would comply with her plans. Moreover, her reference to our precious girl, when speaking to Marcus, revealed that she was presenting Emma to others as belonging to them, rather than simply visiting as our daughter. This was the moment when my maternal instincts overrode my desire to maintain family harmony, and I realized that I needed to take decisive action to protect Emma from what was clearly inappropriate and potentially dangerous behavior. "Natalie, Emma will not be going to your house this afternoon," I said firmly, placing myself between her and Emma's diaper bag. "This is her first Christmas, and she needs to stay home with her parents for the rest of the day." Natalie's reaction to my boundary setting was immediate and revealing. Rather than accepting my decision gracefully or attempting to negotiate a compromise, she became defensive and accusatory, suggesting that I was being selfish and depriving Emma of experiences that would benefit her development. "Rebecca, you're being completely unreasonable," she said with a tone that suggested I was behaving irrationally. "Emma loves coming to our house, and she would benefit from experiencing different environments and meeting new people. You can't keep her isolated just because you're having anxiety about sharing her with family members who love her." The characterization of my protective instincts as anxiety and isolation represented sophisticated psychological manipulation designed to make me question my own judgment while positioning Natalie as the reasonable party in the conflict. This technique was particularly effective because it played into common fears that new mothers experience about being overprotective or limiting their children's social development. However, the intensity of Natalie's reaction to being told no revealed the depth of her emotional investment in controlling Emma's activities and her inability to accept appropriate boundaries around our family relationships. A reasonable aunt would have been disappointed by the limitation but would have accepted the parent's decision without argument or manipulation. The confrontation continued for nearly 30 minutes, with Natalie becoming increasingly agitated and accusatory, while I remained firm in my decision that Emma would not be leaving our home. Marcus attempted to mediate the conflict, but his suggestions for compromise revealed that he was either unaware of the inappropriate nature of Natalie's behavior or unwilling to challenge her directly. David eventually supported my position, though I could see that he was deeply uncomfortable with the level of conflict that had developed over what should have been a joyful family celebration. His support was crucial in establishing that we were united as Emma's parents, but the damage to family relationships had already been done. Natalie and Marcus left our house shortly after the confrontation, with Natalie making pointed comments about how disappointed she was in our selfishness and how much Emma would suffer from being deprived of the loving relationship she was trying to provide. After they departed, David and I sat in our living room holding Emma and trying to process what had just occurred. The Christmas morning we had planned so carefully had been completely disrupted, and we were left feeling confused, angry, and concerned about the implications of Natalie's behavior. "Rebecca, I think we need to have a serious conversation about setting clearer boundaries with Natalie," David said while gently rocking Emma. "Her behavior today was completely inappropriate, and I'm concerned about her expectations regarding her role in Emma's life." The events of Christmas morning had forced David to recognize what my maternal instincts had been warning me about for months. Natalie's behavior was not simply enthusiastic aunt involvement, but rather something much more concerning and potentially dangerous for our family's well-being. As we spent the remainder of Christmas Day in quiet reflection, I began to realize that the morning's events were not an isolated incident, but rather the culmination of months of increasingly inappropriate behavior that I had been too generous in excusing or rationalizing. The seed of determination that would eventually grow into decisive legal action had been planted during those quiet hours of Christmas afternoon, as I held Emma and made the silent promise that I would do whatever was necessary to protect her from anyone who would try to claim her as their own, regardless of family relationships or social expectations. The journey toward understanding the full scope of Natalie's dangerous obsession was just beginning, But Christmas morning had provided the clarity I needed to trust my instincts and begin taking steps to protect Emma from a threat that was much more serious and calculated than I had ever imagined. The week following Christmas brought an unsettling quiet to our household that felt more ominous than peaceful. Natalie had not contacted us since her abrupt departure on Christmas morning, which was unprecedented given her pattern of daily phone calls and frequent unannounced visits. The silence felt deliberate and calculated, rather than the natural cooling-off period that might follow a family disagreement. David returned to work on December 28th, leaving me alone with Emma during the day for the first time since the Christmas morning confrontation. As I sat in the nursery feeding Emma her morning bottle, I found myself replaying the events of that day with new perspective and growing concern about the implications of Natalie's behavior. The intensity of her reaction to being denied permission to take Emma to her house had revealed something far more troubling than disappointed aunt enthusiasm. Her immediate resort to psychological manipulation, her refusal to accept our parental authority, and her obvious expectation that she could make unilateral decisions about Emma's activities suggested a level of delusion about her role in Emma's life that went beyond anything I had previously recognized. More concerning was my growing realization that Christmas morning had likely not been an isolated incident, but rather the most visible manifestation of a pattern of inappropriate behavior that had been developing for months. As I reflected on Natalie's previous interactions with Emma, I began to identify incidents that I had previously dismissed as harmless, but now recognized as potential warning signs of something much more serious. The decision to investigate Natalie's activities more thoroughly was not one I made lightly. The thought of systematically examining my sister's behavior felt like a betrayal of family loyalty and trust. However, my responsibilities as Emma's mother took precedence over my desire to maintain family harmony, and I recognized that understanding the full scope of Natalie's inappropriate involvement was essential for protecting Emma's well-being. My first step was to review the social media posts that Natalie had been making throughout the months since Emma's birth. I had noticed her frequent posts featuring photographs of herself with Emma, but I had not previously examined them with careful attention to the language and implications of her captions. What I discovered was deeply disturbing. Natalie had been consistently presenting Emma to her social media followers as though she were Emma's primary caregiver rather than her aunt. The captions accompanying photographs of Emma rarely mentioned David or me, instead focusing on Natalie's own experiences and emotions related to caring for Emma. One post from early November showed Natalie holding Emma during a visit to our home, with the caption reading, "My beautiful girl had such a wonderful morning with me today. Nothing makes me happier than seeing her smile when I walk into the room. She knows exactly who loves her most." The possessive language and the suggestion that Emma preferred Natalie to her own parents was both inappropriate and factually inaccurate. Another post from mid-December featured a photograph of Emma wearing an outfit that Natalie had purchased, accompanied by text that read, "Getting my precious daughter ready for the holidays. She looks absolutely perfect in everything I choose for her. We have such wonderful taste together." The reference to Emma as "my precious daughter" was particularly alarming, as it suggested that Natalie was actively presenting Emma as her own child to her social media network. As I continued reviewing Natalie's social media history, I discovered dozens of similar posts spanning the entire 6 months since Emma's birth. The pattern was consistent and escalating, with Natalie's language becoming increasingly possessive and her claims about her relationship with Emma becoming more grandiose and inappropriate over time. The most disturbing aspect of these posts was the response they generated from Natalie's friends and acquaintances, many of whom appeared to believe that Emma was actually Natalie's daughter. The comments sections were filled with congratulations on Natalie's motherhood, admiration for her parenting skills, and questions about Emma's father that Natalie answered vaguely or deflected entirely. This discovery revealed that Natalie had been systematically misrepresenting her relationship with Emma to a wide network of people for months, creating a false narrative in which she was Emma's mother rather than her aunt. The implications of this deception were staggering, as it suggested premeditation and planning that went far beyond impulsive or emotional responses to her own fertility struggles. The investigation into Natalie's social media activities led me to examine other aspects of her behavior that I had previously accepted without question. I began to realize that many of the gifts she had given Emma, the arrangements she had made for Emma's care at her house, and the decisions she had made about Emma's activities were consistent with someone who believed she had parental authority, rather than someone who understood her role as an aunt. The nursery Natalie had created in her guest bedroom was far more elaborate and permanent than anything that would be necessary for occasional babysitting. When I called her house to inquire about returning some of Emma's clothes that had been left there during previous visits, Marcus answered the phone and mentioned that Natalie had been spending hours each day in what he referred to as, arranging toys and preparing for Emma's next visit. The language Marcus used to describe the nursery space was revealing, as he clearly understood it to be dedicated specifically to Emma rather than serving as a general guest room that could accommodate visiting children. This suggested that Natalie had presented the arrangement to Marcus as a permanent fixture of their home rather than a temporary convenience for occasional childcare assistance. My growing concerns about Natalie's behavior prompted me to reach out to our mother, Patricia, to discuss the situation and seek guidance about how to address the increasingly troubling pattern of inappropriate involvement. However, the conversation with our mother revealed another dimension of the problem that I had not previously recognized. Patricia had also been receiving regular updates from Natalie about Emma's development and activities, but the information Natalie was providing was often inaccurate or misleading. According to Patricia, Natalie had been describing herself as Emma's primary caregiver during weekdays while David and I were at work, and had been taking credit for various milestones and developmental achievements that had actually occurred while Emma was in my care. Natalie has been telling me such wonderful stories about her time with Emma, Patricia said during our phone conversation. She says Emma is practically living at her house now, and that she has been handling most of the feeding and diaper changes while you focus on recovering from childbirth and adjusting to motherhood. This revelation was shocking because it was completely untrue. While Natalie had provided occasional babysitting assistance, Emma spent the vast majority of her time with David and me, and I had been personally responsible for nearly all of her daily care since returning from maternity leave. Natalie's misrepresentation of the childcare arrangements to our mother suggested a deliberate campaign to establish herself as Emma's primary caregiver in the minds of family members. The conversation with Patricia also revealed that Natalie had been making requests for family photographs and documents related to Emma that seemed inappropriate for an aunt. She had asked for copies of Emma's birth certificate, medical records, and other official documents, claiming that she needed them for emergency purposes in case something happened while Emma was in her care. Patricia had complied with these requests because they seemed reasonable on the surface, but the accumulation of official documents related to Emma in Natalie's possession was concerning, particularly given the other evidence of her inappropriate claims about her relationship with Emma. As my investigation continued, I began to uncover additional evidence that Natalie's obsession with Emma was far more extensive and systematic than I had ever imagined. I discovered that she had been contacting Emma's pediatrician's office to request information about appointments and medical care, presenting herself as Emma's primary caregiver and attempting to be included in decisions about Emma's health care. The pediatrician's office had appropriately refused to provide information to anyone other than Emma's parents, but the attempt itself was revealing about Natalie's expectations regarding her authority over Emma's care. The fact that she felt entitled to access Emma's medical information suggested a complete disconnect from appropriate boundaries and legal realities about parental rights and responsibilities. More disturbing was my discovery that Natalie had been researching legal procedures related to child custody and guardianship. While reviewing her internet browser history during a visit to her house when she was away, I found extensive research about the processes for establishing legal guardianship of minor children, particularly in cases where parents might be deemed unfit or unable to provide adequate care. The specific nature of Natalie's research was deeply alarming. She had been examining scenarios in which aunts or other family members could gain legal custody of children, the criteria courts use to evaluate parental fitness, and the procedures for filing petitions for emergency custody in cases involving alleged child endangerment or neglect. This discovery transformed my understanding of Natalie's behavior, from inappropriate boundary violations to something much more serious and potentially criminal. The research suggested that she was not simply struggling with emotional issues related to her own fertility challenges, but was actively planning to challenge our parental rights and seek legal custody of Emma. The realization that Natalie might be preparing to take legal action against us was terrifying and infuriating in equal measure. The idea that she would attempt to use the court system to separate Emma from her loving and competent parents based on fabricated claims of unfitness or neglect was both morally reprehensible and practically dangerous. However, the discovery also provided crucial information that would enable me to prepare a defense against any potential legal challenges Natalie might initiate. Understanding her research and planning allowed me to begin documenting the evidence that would be necessary to protect Emma and preserve our family's integrity against false accusations or manipulative legal maneuvers. The investigation into Natalie's activities had revealed a pattern of deception, manipulation, and planning that went far beyond anything I had previously imagined possible from a family member. The woman who had presented herself as a loving and devoted aunt was actually someone who had been systematically undermining our parental authority while preparing to challenge our legal rights to our own daughter. The evidence I had uncovered painted a picture of someone who was not simply struggling with emotional issues or boundary problems, but who was actively engaged in what could only be described as a calculated campaign to steal Emma from her rightful parents. The scope and sophistication of her planning suggested that she had been working toward this goal since shortly after Emma's birth, using her position as a trusted family member to gather information and establish false narratives that she intended to use against us. The motivational power of maternal love became crystal clear during this investigation period. Every disturbing discovery about Natalie's behavior only strengthened my resolve to protect Emma and preserve our family's integrity. The betrayal was devastating, but it also revealed reserves of strength and determination that I had not known I possessed. As I compiled the evidence I had gathered about Natalie's inappropriate behavior and potential legal planning, I realized that I needed to take proactive steps to protect Emma before Natalie could implement whatever plan she was developing. The investigation had provided crucial intelligence about the threat we were facing, but intelligence without action would be insufficient to ensure Emma's safety and our family's future. The journey from shock discovery to determined action was fueled by the understanding that protecting Emma required more than hoping that Natalie would recognize appropriate boundaries, or that family loyalty would prevent her from taking destructive action. The evidence clearly demonstrated that Natalie was operating from a delusional framework in which she believed Emma belonged to her, and that she was prepared to use legal and social manipulation to achieve her goals. The transformation from trusting sister to protective mother investigating a family member's dangerous behavior was painful but necessary. The investigation had revealed the true nature of the threat Emma faced, and had provided the foundation for the decisive legal action that would ultimately be required to secure our family's future and ensure that Emma could grow up with her rightful parents, without the constant threat of interference or attempted kidnapping by someone who refused to accept reality. The evidence I had gathered during my investigation into Natalie's behavior created an urgent need for professional legal guidance. The discovery that she had been researching custody procedures and guardianship laws transformed the situation from a family boundary dispute into a potential legal battle that could threaten Emma's security and our family's fundamental integrity. The realization that I needed to prepare for the possibility of court proceedings was both terrifying and empowering, as it marked the moment when I shifted from reactive concern to proactive protection. On January 3rd, exactly 1 week after my investigation had revealed the scope of Natalie's deceptive behavior, I made an appointment with Sarah Mitchell, a family law attorney whose practice specialized in custody disputes and parental rights protection. The decision to consult with legal counsel represented a significant escalation in my response to Natalie's inappropriate behavior. But the evidence I had uncovered made it clear that informal family discussions or boundary-setting conversations would be insufficient to address the threat Emma faced. Sarah Mitchell's office was located in downtown Denver, occupying the 15th floor of a modern building that overlooked the Colorado State Capitol. The professional environment provided a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil I was experiencing, but it also reinforced the seriousness of the situation and the importance of approaching the problem with strategic thinking rather than purely emotional responses. During our initial consultation, I presented the comprehensive documentation I had compiled during my investigation. The social media posts showing Natalie's misrepresentation of her relationship with Emma, the evidence of her attempts to access Emma's medical records, the browser history revealing her research into custody procedures, and the detailed account of her Christmas morning behavior painted a picture of systematic deception and potential planning for legal action against our parental rights. Sarah Mitchell reviewed the evidence with the thorough attention of someone who had handled similar cases involving family members who overstepped appropriate boundaries with children. Her analysis of the documentation was both reassuring and sobering, as she confirmed that my concerns were well-founded, while also explaining the complexities involved in protecting against false accusations or manipulative legal challenges. Mrs. Martinez, the pattern of behavior you have documented is consistent with what we see in cases involving individuals who have developed inappropriate attachments to children and who may be preparing to challenge parental rights through legal manipulation, Sarah explained during our meeting. The combination of social media misrepresentation, attempts to access official documents, and research into custody procedures suggests that your sister may indeed be planning to file some form of legal challenge to your authority as Emma's parents. The confirmation that my investigation had revealed genuine cause for concern was both validating and frightening. While it was reassuring to have a legal professional acknowledge that my concerns were legitimate, rather than the product of new mother anxiety or family relationship paranoia, it was also deeply disturbing to understand that the threat to Emma's security was as serious as I had feared. Sarah Mitchell outlined several proactive measures that David and I could implement to protect against potential legal challenges, while also documenting any continued inappropriate behavior from Natalie. The strategy she recommended involved both defensive preparation and offensive documentation, creating a comprehensive record that would protect Emma's interests, regardless of what legal actions Natalie might attempt. The first component of our legal strategy involved documenting Emma's current living situation, care arrangements, and developmental progress to establish a clear record of her well-being under our care. This documentation would serve as evidence of our competence as parents, and would counter any false allegations that Natalie might make about our fitness or ability to provide appropriate care for Emma. Sarah Mitchell recommended that we obtain written statements from Emma's pediatrician, daycare providers, and other professionals who had observed our parenting to establish an official record of Emma's health, development, and the quality of care she received. These professional assessments would carry significant weight in any legal proceedings and would provide objective evidence to counter subjective allegations or emotionally motivated accusations. The second component of our strategy involved restricting Natalie's access to Emma, while carefully documenting any attempts she made to circumvent the boundaries we established. Sarah Mitchell explained that supervised visitation in controlled environments would be appropriate given the evidence of inappropriate behavior, but that completely cutting off contact might be viewed negatively by courts that generally favor maintaining family relationships when possible. The implementation of supervised visitation represented a significant change in our family dynamics, but it was necessary to protect Emma while also demonstrating our willingness to maintain appropriate family relationships. The supervision would need to be provided by neutral parties who could document Natalie's behavior and ensure that she did not have opportunities to engage in manipulation or inappropriate boundary violations during her interactions with Emma. The third component of our legal preparation involved establishing clear communication protocols that would document any interactions between Natalie and our family. Sarah Mitchell recommended that all communication with Natalie should occur through written channels, such as email or text messages, that would create permanent records of her statements and requests. Phone conversations should be avoided when possible, and any necessary verbal communication should be followed up with written summaries that documented what was discussed. This communication strategy would serve multiple purposes, both protecting against misunderstandings or misrepresentations, while also creating evidence of any continued inappropriate behavior or unreasonable demands. The written record would be crucial if legal proceedings became necessary, as it would provide objective documentation of Natalie's statements and actions, rather than relying on potentially disputed recollections of verbal conversations. The legal consultation also addressed the broader implications of Natalie's behavior for our family's security and privacy. Sarah Mitchell explained that individuals who develop inappropriate attachments to children often escalate their behavior when their access is restricted, and that we should be prepared for the possibility that Natalie might become more aggressive or desperate in her attempts to maintain control over Emma's life. The discussion of potential escalation was sobering but necessary, as it helped me understand that the legal preparation we were undertaking was not just about protecting against theoretical future threats, but about preparing for scenarios that could develop rapidly if Natalie's behavior continued to deteriorate. The professional guidance provided a framework for understanding and responding to developments that would have otherwise left me feeling overwhelmed and unprepared. Following the legal consultation, I returned home with a clear action plan and a renewed sense of agency in protecting Emma's well-being. The professional validation of my concerns and the concrete steps I could take to safeguard our family's interests transformed my anxiety and fear into focused determination and strategic thinking. David's reaction to the legal consultation was initially one of shock at the seriousness of the situation, but he quickly recognized the necessity of the proactive measures Sarah Mitchell had recommended. His support for implementing the legal protection strategy was crucial, as it demonstrated our unity as parents and ensured that we would present a consistent approach to addressing Natalie's inappropriate behavior. The implementation of our legal protection strategy began immediately with the documentation of Emma's current care arrangements and developmental status. I scheduled a comprehensive wellness visit with Emma's pediatrician, Dr. Amanda Chen, to obtain detailed medical records and a professional assessment of Emma's health and development under our care. Dr. Chen had been Emma's pediatrician since birth and had observed our parenting during numerous appointments and routine visits. Her professional opinion carried significant weight, and her documentation of Emma's excellent health and normal development would provide strong evidence of our competence as parents. During the wellness visit, Dr. Chen noted Emma's advanced development in several areas: her healthy weight gain and growth patterns, and the strong attachment bond she had developed with both David and me. The pediatrician's records documented that Emma was thriving under our care, and that we had been conscientious and informed parents who followed medical recommendations and prioritized Emma's well-being. The professional documentation also included detailed records of Emma's vaccination schedule, developmental milestones, and any medical concerns that had arisen during her first 6 months of life. This comprehensive medical record would serve as objective evidence of our responsible parenting and would counter any false allegations about neglect or inadequate care that Natalie might attempt to make. The second phase of our defensive preparation involved establishing new protocols for any future interactions between Natalie and Emma. Based on Sarah Mitchell's recommendations, we implemented a policy requiring that any visits between Natalie and Emma would occur in our home under our direct supervision, with specific time limits and clear behavioral expectations. The implementation of supervised visitation represented a significant departure from the previous arrangement where Natalie had enjoyed unrestricted access to Emma and had often taken her to various locations without detailed oversight. The new restrictions were designed to protect Emma while also providing opportunities to document Natalie's behavior and responses to appropriate boundaries. The communication of these new boundaries to Natalie required careful consideration of both legal and relationship factors. Sarah Mitchell had advised that the notification should be clear and specific about the new requirements, while avoiding language that could be interpreted as accusatory or inflammatory. The goal was to establish reasonable protection measures while maintaining a tone that demonstrated our willingness to preserve family relationships within appropriate limits. The email I sent to Natalie on January 8 outlined the new visitation protocols in professional and measured language. I explained that due to our desire to ensure consistency in Emma's care and to maintain appropriate boundaries around her routine, future visits would need to be scheduled in advance and would occur in our home under our supervision. The message emphasized our continued appreciation for Natalie's love for Emma, while establishing clear expectations about respectful behavior during visits. Natalie's response to the new boundaries revealed the depth of her sense of entitlement regarding Emma and her inability to accept appropriate limitations on her involvement. Rather than acknowledging the reasonableness of the supervised visitation requirements or expressing understanding of our concerns, she responded with anger and accusations that demonstrated her complete disconnect from appropriate family dynamics. Her written response accused me of being an overprotective and unstable mother who was damaging Emma's development by limiting her exposure to loving family members. She claimed that the restrictions were evidence of postpartum depression or anxiety disorders that were affecting my judgment and ability to make rational decisions about Emma's care. The psychological manipulation inherent in Natalie's response was sophisticated and calculated, designed to make me question my own judgment while positioning herself as the reasonable party who was being victimized by my irrational behavior. However, the legal preparation I had undertaken provided me with the framework to recognize these tactics and to respond strategically rather than emotionally. The written nature of Natalie's response proved to be valuable evidence of her inappropriate expectations and her unwillingness to respect reasonable boundaries. Her failure to acknowledge any legitimacy in our concerns about her behavior, combined with her immediate resort to personal attacks and psychological manipulation, demonstrated exactly the kind of response pattern that Sarah Mitchell had warned me to expect from individuals who view children as belonging to them rather than recognizing appropriate family roles. The establishment of legal protection measures and the documentation of Natalie's response to reasonable boundaries marked a crucial turning point in our approach to the situation. The shift from hoping that family loyalty and reasonable discussion would resolve the problem to implementing professional legal strategies represented my evolution from a trusting family member to a strategic protector of Emma's interests. The motivational power of this transformation cannot be overstated. The realization that I possessed the strength and intelligence necessary to navigate complex legal and emotional challenges while protecting my daughter from a sophisticated manipulation campaign filled me with confidence and determination that extended far beyond the immediate crisis. The legal preparation process also revealed the importance of professional guidance and strategic thinking in addressing serious threats to family security. The consultation with Sarah Mitchell had provided not just specific tactical recommendations, but also a framework for understanding the broader dynamics at play and the long-term implications of various response strategies. As January progressed and our legal protection measures took effect, I found myself feeling more empowered and less victimized by Natalie's inappropriate behavior. The transformation from reactive anxiety to proactive strategy implementation demonstrated how professional support and systematic preparation could convert overwhelming challenges into manageable problems with clear solutions. The foundation was now established for whatever legal or personal challenges Natalie might present in her continued attempts to maintain inappropriate control over Emma's life. The documentation, professional assessments, and legal framework we had created would serve as the bedrock for protecting Emma's interests and preserving our family's integrity against any future manipulation or false accusations. The implementation of supervised visitation and clear communication boundaries with Natalie produced immediate consequences that validated every concern I had developed about her psychological state and her intentions regarding Emma. Rather than accepting the reasonable restrictions we had established, or demonstrating any understanding of our legitimate parental authority, Natalie responded with a campaign of harassment and manipulation that exceeded even my worst expectations about her potential for destructive behavior. The first indication that Natalie would not accept our new boundaries came within 24 hours of receiving my email outlining the supervised visitation requirements. Instead of responding directly to the communication I had sent, she began a series of indirect approaches designed to circumvent our established protocols while maintaining plausible deniability about her violations of our clearly stated expectations. On January 9th, Natalie appeared at Emma's daycare facility during the afternoon pickup time, claiming that she had been asked to collect Emma due to an emergency involving David and me. The daycare staff, following their established security protocols, refused to release Emma to anyone other than the authorized individuals listed on her enrollment forms. However, Natalie's attempt to manipulate the childcare providers into releasing Emma without proper authorization revealed the lengths to which she was prepared to go in order to maintain access to our daughter. The daycare director, Mrs. Jennifer Walsh, immediately contacted me to report the incident and to verify that no emergency had occurred that would warrant alternative pickup arrangements. Her professional handling of the situation provided crucial documentation of Natalie's deceptive behavior, while also demonstrating the effectiveness of the security measures we had implemented to protect Emma from unauthorized access attempts. Mrs. Walsh's detailed incident report described Natalie as appearing agitated and insistent when her request was denied, and noted that she had attempted to argue that the daycare's security policies were unreasonable. and that she should be permitted to take Emma based on her status as a family member. The daycare director's refusal to compromise on security protocols despite Natalie's emotional manipulation provided an example of how professional boundaries could effectively counter inappropriate demands. The failed daycare pickup attempt was followed by a series of increasingly aggressive communication efforts from Natalie, including multiple phone calls to our home, text messages sent throughout the day and evening hours, and emails that alternated between pleading for understanding and making accusations about our fitness as parents. The frequency and intensity of her communication attempts demonstrated a complete disregard for reasonable boundaries and an escalating desperation to maintain control over Emma's life. Natalie's written communications during this period revealed the sophistication of her psychological manipulation techniques and her willingness to employ multiple strategies to achieve her objectives. Some messages positioned her as a concerned family member who was worried about Emma's well-being under our care, while others portrayed her as a victim of unreasonable restrictions imposed by overprotective parents who were denying Emma access to loving extended family relationships. One particularly manipulative email, sent on January 12, claimed that Emma had been crying inconsolably during recent visits to our home, and that Natalie believed this distress was caused by the tension and anxiety we were creating around family relationships. She suggested that Emma would be happier and more secure if she could spend extended time at Natalie's house, where she could experience the calm and loving environment that Natalie claimed we were unable to provide. The fabrication inherent in these claims was obvious to David and me, as Emma had shown no signs of distress during family interactions, and had actually seemed more relaxed in content since we had implemented the supervised visitation protocols. However, the sophistication of Natalie's false narrative demonstrated her understanding of how to construct plausible-sounding accusations that could potentially influence the perceptions of family members or legal authorities who were not directly familiar with the actual circumstances. The pattern of escalating communication was accompanied by increasingly desperate attempts to involve other family members in pressuring us to rescind the boundaries we had established. Natalie contacted our parents, David's parents, and various aunts and cousins to present her version of events, and to request their intervention in convincing us to restore her previous level of access to Emma. The family pressure campaign revealed another dimension of Natalie's manipulation strategy, as she carefully tailored her presentations to different family members based on their individual relationships with us, and their likely responses to various types of appeals. To our parents, she emphasized concerns about Emma's well-being, and suggested that we were being influenced by postpartum psychological issues that were affecting our judgment. To David's parents, she focused on the importance of maintaining family harmony, and suggested that our restrictions were unnecessarily divisive. The effectiveness of Natalie's manipulation efforts with certain family members created additional stress and complexity in our situation, as we found ourselves having to defend our reasonable parental decisions to relatives who had been influenced by Natalie's false narratives. However, this challenge also provided opportunities to educate family members about the actual circumstances, while building support for our position among those who were able to recognize the inappropriate nature of Natalie's behavior. My mother, Patricia, initially expressed concern about the restrictions we had implemented, and suggested that we might be overreacting to what she characterized as Natalie's enthusiasm for being involved in Emma's life. However, when I shared specific examples of Natalie's inappropriate behavior and provided documentation of her attempts to misrepresent her relationship with Emma, Patricia began to understand the seriousness of the situation and the necessity of the protective measures we had taken. The conversation with my mother marked a crucial turning point in building family support for our position, as Patricia's recognition of the legitimacy of our concerns provided validation from someone who had known Natalie throughout her life and who could speak to patterns of behavior that extended beyond the current crisis. Patricia's support also helped counter Natalie's attempts to portray us as unreasonable or unstable, as she was able to provide perspective on the historical context of Natalie's difficulty with accepting boundaries and limitations. David's parents, Robert and Maria Martinez, required more extensive education about the situation before they could fully understand the appropriateness of our response to Natalie's behavior. Their initial reaction was to encourage compromise and family harmony, as they valued maintaining positive relationships among extended family members and were uncomfortable with the level of conflict that had developed. However, when David presented them with concrete examples of Natalie's social media misrepresentations and her attempts to access Emma's official documents, they began to recognize that the situation involved more than typical family disagreements about childcare arrangements. Their eventual support for our position provided additional validation of our parental authority and helped establish a broader family consensus about the necessity of protecting Emma from inappropriate interference. The family education process, while time-consuming and emotionally demanding, proved to be crucial for building the support network that would be necessary if legal proceedings became unavoidable. The documentation of family members' understanding and support of our position would provide evidence that reasonable people who knew the circumstances agreed with our assessment of the situation and our response to the threats Emma faced. Natalie's reaction to losing support from key family members was swift and revealing. Rather than accepting the feedback from relatives who encouraged her to respect our parental authority and work within appropriate boundaries, she escalated her accusations against us and began making increasingly desperate claims about Emma's alleged mistreatment under our care. On January 18th, Natalie contacted the Colorado Department of Human Services to file a complaint, alleging that Emma was being neglected and potentially abused by parents who were denying her access to loving family members and creating an environment of anxiety and instability. The false report represented a significant escalation in Natalie's campaign against our family and demonstrated her willingness to involve government authorities in her attempt to gain control over Emma's care. The Child Protective Services investigation that resulted from Natalie's false report was one of the most stressful experiences of my life, despite my confidence that the allegations were completely unfounded. The prospect of having government authorities question our fitness as parents and investigate our home environment was terrifying, even though I knew that the professional documentation we had compiled would demonstrate Emma's excellent care and development under our supervision. The social worker assigned to investigate Natalie's complaint, Ms. Linda Rodriguez, conducted a thorough and professional evaluation that included interviews with David and me, observation of our interactions with Emma, review of Emma's medical records, and consultations with her daycare providers and pediatrician. The comprehensive nature of the investigation was reassuring, as it demonstrated that serious allegations would be thoroughly examined, rather than dismissed without proper evaluation. Ms. Rodriguez's findings completely vindicated our parenting and revealed the baseless nature of Natalie's accusations. Her report documented Emma's excellent health and development, our appropriate provision of medical care and educational stimulation, and the strong attachment bond Emma had developed with both parents. The investigation also noted the consistency between our account of events and the observations of professionals who had interacted with our family. The Child Protective Services report became a crucial piece of evidence demonstrating both our competence as parents and Natalie's willingness to make false accusations against us in her desperate attempt to gain access to Emma. The documentation of her bad faith reporting would prove valuable in any future legal proceedings, as it established a pattern of deceptive and manipulative behavior that extended to involving government authorities in her personal vendetta. The resolution of the Child Protective Services investigation marked a significant victory in our defense against Natalie's accusations, but it also represented a clear escalation in the conflict that made additional legal preparation necessary. Natalie's willingness to involve government authorities in false allegations demonstrated that she would stop at nothing to achieve her objectives, and that we needed to be prepared for even more serious legal challenges in the future. The experience of successfully defending against false allegations while maintaining Emma's well-being and our family's integrity provided a powerful demonstration of the effectiveness of proper preparation and professional documentation. The comprehensive records we had compiled, the professional assessments we had obtained, and the clear communication protocols we had established had enabled us to respond effectively to serious accusations while protecting Emma from the trauma of extended investigation or disruption. The psychological impact of successfully navigating the Child Protective Services investigation was transformative for my confidence and sense of personal efficacy. The realization that I could effectively defend my family against sophisticated manipulation and false accusations while maintaining my professional responsibilities and Emma's daily care routine demonstrated reserves of strength and capability that I had not previously recognized in myself. The motivational power of this experience extended beyond the immediate crisis to influence my broader understanding of personal resilience and the capacity for growth under pressure. The challenge of protecting Emma from Natalie's inappropriate behavior had required me to develop new skills in legal strategy, family communication, and crisis management that would serve me well in future personal and professional challenges. As January drew to a close, it became clear that Natalie's escalating behavior and her willingness to make false accusations meant that more decisive legal action would eventually be necessary to protect Emma's long-term security. The pattern of harassment, manipulation, and false reporting suggested that informal boundaries and family intervention would be insufficient to address the threat she represented to our family's well-being. The foundation for more aggressive legal action had been established through the comprehensive documentation we had compiled, the professional assessments we had obtained, and the clear evidence of Natalie's inappropriate behavior and false accusations. The next phase of our defensive strategy would require transitioning from reactive protection measures to proactive legal initiatives, designed to permanently resolve the threat to Emma's security and our family's peace of mind. The conclusion of the Child Protective Services investigation in late January provided the conclusive evidence I needed to transition from defensive protection measures to aggressive legal action designed to permanently resolve the threat Natalie posed to Emma's security and our family's well-being. The documented pattern of false accusations, harassment, and manipulation had created a compelling case for seeking court-ordered restrictions that would prevent future interference, while establishing clear legal consequences for any continued inappropriate behavior. My second consultation with Sarah Mitchell on February 2nd focused on developing a comprehensive legal strategy that would address both the immediate need for protection and the long-term goal of ensuring Emma could grow up without the constant threat of interference from someone who refused to acknowledge appropriate family boundaries. The evidence we had compiled during the previous month provided the foundation for multiple legal remedies that could work together to create a protective framework around our family. Sarah Mitchell explained that the documentation of Natalie's behavior patterns had established grounds for seeking a restraining order that would legally prohibit her from contacting Emma, attempting to access her at daycare or other locations, and engaging in the harassment campaigns that had escalated following our implementation of supervised visitation protocols. The restraining order would provide immediate legal protection while also establishing consequences for any future violations. The legal framework for obtaining protection extended beyond simple contact restrictions to include provisions that would prevent Natalie from making false reports to government agencies, contacting Emma's caregivers or medical providers, and engaging in social media misrepresentations that could affect Emma's reputation or well-being as she grew older. The comprehensive nature of the protection order would address all aspects of Natalie's inappropriate behavior while providing clear legal remedies for any future violations. However, Sarah Mitchell also identified an opportunity to pursue more extensive legal action that could address the broader implications of Natalie's deceptive behavior and provide additional protection for Emma's future security. The evidence of Natalie's systematic misrepresentation of her relationship with Emma, combined with her attempts to access official documents and her research into custody procedures, suggested that she might be vulnerable to legal action for fraud, identity theft, and other criminal behaviors. The most significant aspect of our expanded legal strategy involved investigating Natalie's use of Emma's identity and personal information for purposes that exceeded appropriate family involvement. The evidence suggested that Natalie had been presenting Emma as her own child in various contexts, potentially including medical appointments, educational programs, and financial arrangements that could constitute serious legal violations. Sarah Mitchell recommended hiring a private investigator to conduct a comprehensive examination of Natalie's activities related to Emma, including her use of Emma's name and information in official contexts, her representations to third parties about her relationship with Emma, and any financial or legal arrangements she might have established that involved Emma's identity without proper parental authorization. The decision to hire a private investigator represented a significant escalation in our legal response, but the evidence already gathered suggested that Natalie's deceptive behavior extended far beyond what we had discovered through our own investigations. Professional investigative services would be necessary to uncover the full scope of her activities, and to compile the evidence necessary for comprehensive legal action. The private investigator we retained, Michael Anderson of Denver Investigative Services, specialized in family law cases involving fraud, harassment, and identity theft. His initial assessment of the evidence we provided confirmed that Natalie's behavior patterns were consistent with cases involving individuals who had developed delusional beliefs about their relationship with children and who were prepared to engage in extensive deception to maintain those beliefs. Michael Anderson's investigation began with a comprehensive review of public records, financial documents, and institutional contacts that might reveal the extent of Natalie's use of Emma's identity or her misrepresentations about their relationship. The systematic approach would ensure that all relevant evidence was identified and properly documented for potential legal proceedings. The first phase of the professional investigation revealed disturbing evidence that Natalie's deceptive behavior was far more extensive than we had previously understood. Records from several medical facilities showed that Natalie had attempted to schedule appointments for Emma at clinics where she was not established as a patient, presenting herself as Emma's primary caregiver and attempting to authorize medical procedures without proper parental consent. The medical records revealed that Natalie had successfully obtained vaccinations and routine care for Emma at 2 different clinics by presenting false documentation suggesting that she had legal authority to make medical decisions. The fraudulent medical care represented serious violations of both parental rights and medical consent procedures, while also creating potential health risks for Emma through uncoordinated care and duplicated treatments. The investigation also uncovered evidence that Natalie had opened a savings account in Emma's name using falsified documentation that suggested she was Emma's legal guardian. The account had been established with initial deposits totaling over $8,000, and Natalie had been making regular monthly contributions while presenting the arrangement to bank personnel as a college fund she was managing for her daughter. The financial fraud represented by the unauthorized bank account was particularly serious, because it involved the use of Emma's social security number and personal information for purposes that required legal guardianship or parental authority. The evidence demonstrated that Natalie had obtained and used official documents related to Emma without authorization, constituting identity theft and financial fraud that could result in serious criminal charges. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery that Natalie had enrolled in parenting classes and early childhood development programs, presenting herself as Emma's mother, and using these educational contexts to reinforce her false claims about their relationship. The educational fraud extended to participation in new mother support groups, infant development assessments, and childcare training programs, where she had consistently misrepresented her role in Emma's life. The comprehensive evidence compiled by Michael Anderson's investigation revealed that Natalie's deceptive behavior constituted a systematic campaign of identity theft, fraud, and impersonation that had been ongoing since shortly after Emma's birth. The scope and sophistication of her activities demonstrated premeditation and planning that extended far beyond emotional responses to her own fertility challenges. The criminal nature of Natalie's activities provided the foundation for pursuing legal remedies that would extend beyond civil protection orders to include criminal charges that could result in significant legal consequences. Sarah Mitchell explained that the evidence of fraud, identity theft, and medical consent violations created grounds for criminal prosecution that would be handled by the Denver District Attorney's Office in addition to the civil proceedings we were pursuing. The coordination between civil protection measures and criminal prosecution would provide comprehensive legal consequences for Natalie's behavior, while also ensuring that Emma's interests were protected through multiple legal frameworks. The criminal charges would establish official recognition of the seriousness of Natalie's violations, while the civil proceedings would focus specifically on protecting Emma from future interference. On February 18th, we filed a comprehensive legal action that included requests for a permanent restraining order, restitution for the financial fraud involving Emma's identity, and cooperation with criminal prosecutors who would be pursuing charges related to the identity theft and medical consent violations. The filing represented the culmination of weeks of investigation and legal preparation, and marked the beginning of formal proceedings that would determine Emma's future security. The legal documents we filed contained detailed documentation of every aspect of Natalie's inappropriate behavior, from the initial boundary violations and social media misrepresentations to the more serious criminal activities involving fraud and identity theft. The comprehensive evidence created a compelling case for the protection Emma needed, while also establishing the legal precedent that would prevent future interference. Natalie's response to being served with legal papers revealed the depth of her delusion about her relationship with Emma and her complete inability to acknowledge the inappropriate nature of her behavior. Rather than recognizing the seriousness of the allegations against her, or attempting to negotiate a resolution that would respect our parental rights, she filed counter-motions claiming that we were unfit parents who were preventing Emma from receiving the care and love she needed. The counter-allegations included claims that David and I were neglecting Emma's developmental needs, that we were creating an unstable home environment through our restriction of family relationships, and that Emma would benefit from being placed in Natalie's care where she could receive the attention and resources necessary for optimal growth and development. The fabricated nature of Natalie's counter-allegations was obvious given the comprehensive documentation we had compiled regarding Emma's excellent health, development, and care under our supervision. However, the willingness to make false accusations in legal proceedings demonstrated the extent of her desperation and her complete disconnect from reality regarding appropriate family relationships. Sarah Mitchell's response to Natalie's counter-motions was swift and comprehensive, providing detailed evidence that refuted every allegation while also documenting the pattern of false accusations that Natalie had established through her previous complaints to Child Protective Services and other authorities. The legal response established that Natalie's allegations were not only unfounded, but also represented a continuation of her harassment campaign through the court system. The preliminary hearings in our legal case provided the first opportunity to present evidence of Natalie's inappropriate behavior to a judge, who could evaluate the circumstances objectively and determine the appropriate legal remedies. The professional presentation of our evidence, combined with the obvious fabrication inherent in Natalie's counter-allegations, created a clear contrast that supported our requests for comprehensive protection. Judge Maria Gonzalez, who presided over the family court proceedings, demonstrated thorough understanding of the complex dynamics involved in cases where family members overstep appropriate boundaries with children. Her evaluation of the evidence focused on Emma's best interests, while also recognizing the importance of protecting parental rights from inappropriate interference by extended family members. The judge's preliminary ruling granted temporary protection orders that immediately restricted Natalie's ability to contact Emma or interfere with her care, while also ordering a comprehensive evaluation of all parties involved in the dispute. The court-ordered evaluation would provide additional professional assessment of the circumstances while ensuring that all relevant factors were considered before final determinations were made. The court-ordered evaluation process involved interviews with mental health professionals, social workers, and child development experts, who would assess Emma's well-being under our care, while also evaluating the appropriateness of Natalie's behavior and expectations. The professional evaluation provided an additional layer of objective assessment that would inform the court's final decisions about permanent protection measures. The initial phase of legal proceedings had achieved the immediate goal of protecting Emma from further interference, while also establishing the official record that would support more comprehensive remedies as the case progressed. The combination of civil protection orders and pending criminal charges created a framework of legal consequences that demonstrated the seriousness of Natalie's violations, while providing multiple avenues for ensuring Emma's future security. The transformation from vulnerable family members trying to manage inappropriate behavior to empowered legal advocates pursuing comprehensive protection represented a fundamental shift in our approach to the crisis. The realization that we possess the strength, intelligence, and resources necessary to navigate complex legal proceedings while maintaining Emma's well-being and our family's integrity provided powerful validation of our capacity to overcome seemingly overwhelming challenges through systematic preparation and professional support. The legal offensive we had launched represented more than simply defending against Natalie's inappropriate behavior. It demonstrated our commitment to ensuring that Emma could grow up in an environment free from manipulation, false accusations, and the constant threat of interference from someone who refused to acknowledge appropriate family boundaries. The comprehensive nature of our legal strategy provided a model for how parents could protect their children from sophisticated threats while also establishing legal precedents that would benefit other families facing similar challenges. The formal court proceedings that began in early March represented the culmination of months of investigation, legal preparation, and strategic planning designed to protect Emma from further interference while establishing permanent consequences for Natalie's inappropriate behavior. The comprehensive evidence we had compiled provided the foundation for multiple legal remedies that would address both the immediate need for protection and the long-term goal of ensuring Emma's security as she grew older. The court-ordered psychological evaluation process commenced on March 5 with Dr. Catherine Williams, a licensed clinical psychologist who specialized in family dynamics and child welfare assessments. Dr. Williams had extensive experience evaluating situations involving inappropriate family relationships and was particularly qualified to assess the complex psychological factors that contributed to boundary violations involving children. The evaluation process involved separate interviews with David and me, comprehensive psychological testing, and detailed assessments of our parenting capabilities and Emma's developmental progress under our care. Dr. Williams also conducted extensive interviews with Natalie to evaluate her psychological state, her understanding of appropriate family relationships, and her capacity for recognizing and respecting boundaries. During my individual session with Dr. Williams, I presented the complete timeline of Natalie's inappropriate behavior, beginning with the initial boundary violations following Emma's birth, and progressing through the escalating harassment campaign that had prompted our legal action. Dr. Williams demonstrated thorough understanding of the psychological dynamics involved in cases where family members develop inappropriate attachments to children. The psychological evaluation revealed that my responses to Natalie's behavior had been appropriate and necessary for protecting Emma's well-being. Dr. Williams noted that my documentation of concerning incidents, my implementation of reasonable boundaries, and my pursuit of professional guidance demonstrated responsible parenting and effective crisis management skills that protected Emma while preserving opportunities for appropriate family relationships. Dr. Williams's assessment of David confirmed that he had been supportive of necessary protective measures while maintaining his professional responsibilities and contributing effectively to Emma's daily care. The evaluation documented our strong partnership as parents and our shared commitment to Emma's best interests, even when those interests required difficult decisions about family relationships. The evaluation of Emma herself revealed a healthy, well-adjusted infant who was developing normally and demonstrating secure attachment patterns with both parents. Dr. Williams noted that Emma showed no signs of anxiety, developmental delays, or behavioral problems that would suggest inappropriate care or environmental instability. The assessment provided objective confirmation that Emma was thriving under our care and benefiting from the stable, loving environment we had created. The psychological evaluation of Natalie revealed significantly more concerning findings that supported our allegations about her inappropriate behavior and delusional beliefs about her relationship with Emma. Dr. Williams identified patterns of thought and behavior that were consistent with individuals who develop inappropriate attachments to children and who may pose risks to child welfare when their access is appropriately restricted. The evaluation documented that Natalie demonstrated poor insight into appropriate family boundaries, persistent denial of the legitimacy of parental authority, and unrealistic expectations about her role in Emma's life that were inconsistent with typical aunt-niece relationships. Dr. Williams noted that Natalie appeared to have developed a delusional belief system in which she viewed Emma as belonging to her rather than recognizing Emma as David's and my daughter. Perhaps most significantly, Dr. Williams identified patterns of manipulation, deception, and false victimization that were consistent with personality disorders that could make Natalie dangerous to Emma's psychological and physical well-being if her access were not appropriately restricted. The evaluation recommended ongoing psychological treatment for Natalie and supported the implementation of legal restrictions to protect Emma from continued inappropriate interference. The comprehensive psychological evaluation provided crucial professional validation of our concerns about Natalie's behavior while also establishing the scientific foundation for the legal remedies we were seeking. Dr. Williams's recommendations supported both immediate protection measures and long-term restrictions that would ensure Emma's continued safety as she developed. The criminal proceedings that had been initiated based on evidence of Natalie's fraudulent activities advanced simultaneously with the civil protection case, creating multiple avenues for addressing the various violations she had committed, while attempting to establish inappropriate control over Emma's life. The coordination between civil and criminal proceedings ensured that all aspects of her behavior would face appropriate legal consequences. The Denver District Attorney's Office had assigned prosecutor Jennifer Martinez to handle the criminal charges related to identity theft, financial fraud, and medical consent violations. Prosecutor Martinez had extensive experience with family-related crimes and understood the particular challenges involved in cases where criminal behavior was motivated by inappropriate attachments to children. The criminal case focused on specific violations that could be proven through documentary evidence, including the unauthorized bank account opened in Emma's name, the fraudulent medical appointments arranged without parental consent, and the systematic use of Emma's personal information for purposes that required legal guardianship or parental authority. The evidence compiled by our private investigator provided comprehensive documentation of each criminal violation, including bank records showing unauthorized use of Emma's Social Security number, medical records documenting fraudulent consent procedures, and witness statements from institutional personnel who had been deceived by Natalie's misrepresentations about her relationship with Emma. The strength of the criminal evidence created opportunities for plea negotiations that could result in legal consequences for Natalie, while avoiding the emotional trauma of extended court proceedings. Prosecutor Martinez explained that the documentary evidence was sufficiently compelling to support conviction on multiple charges, creating incentives for Natalie to accept responsibility and agree to restrictions that would protect Emma from future interference. However, Natalie's response to the criminal charges revealed the depth of her delusion and her continued inability to acknowledge the inappropriate nature of her behavior. Rather than accepting responsibility for the documented violations or negotiating a resolution that would respect our parental rights, she maintained her innocence and claimed that her actions were justified by her love for Emma and her concerns about our fitness as parents. The criminal proceedings moved forward with formal charges being filed on March 20th, including multiple counts of identity theft, financial fraud, and violations of medical consent procedures. The charges carried potential sentences that included both financial penalties and imprisonment, demonstrating the seriousness with which the legal system viewed Natalie's violations of Emma's rights and our parental authority. The civil protection case progressed through comprehensive evidentiary hearings that allowed both sides to present their arguments and evidence to Judge Gonzalez for evaluation. The hearings provided opportunities to demonstrate the full scope of Natalie's inappropriate behavior, while also addressing her counter-allegations about our fitness as parents. The evidentiary presentations began on March 25th, with Sarah Mitchell systematically presenting the documented timeline of Natalie's boundary violations, harassment campaigns, and criminal activities. The evidence included social media posts showing misrepresentation of her relationship with Emma, communication records documenting harassment and manipulation attempts, and professional reports confirming the fraudulent nature of her various schemes. The presentation of evidence was methodical and comprehensive, establishing not only the specific incidents of inappropriate behavior, but also the patterns of escalation and the systematic nature of Natalie's campaign to establish inappropriate control over Emma's life. The documentation demonstrated that Natalie's behavior had been calculated and persistent rather than representing isolated incidents of poor judgment. The testimony from professional witnesses provided crucial support for our case, with Dr. Williams presenting her psychological evaluation findings and explaining the implications of Natalie's delusional beliefs about Emma. The pediatrician Dr. Chen testified about Emma's excellent health and development under our care, while also describing Natalie's inappropriate attempts to access medical information and authorize treatments without proper consent. The daycare director, Mrs. Walsh, provided testimony about the attempted unauthorized pickup incident and described Natalie's pattern of inappropriate behavior during visits to the facility. Her professional observations supported our allegations about Natalie's inability to respect boundaries and her willingness to deceive institutional personnel to gain access to Emma. Natalie's legal representation attempted to present evidence supporting her counter-allegations about our fitness as parents, but the comprehensive documentation we had compiled effectively refuted each claim while demonstrating the fabricated nature of her accusations. Her attorney's presentation lacked credible evidence and relied primarily on emotional appeals and unsupported assertions about Emma's alleged needs. The cross-examination of Natalie during the court proceedings revealed the extent of her delusion and her complete inability to acknowledge the inappropriate nature of her behavior. Her testimony included continued claims that Emma belonged to her in ways that transcended typical family relationships, persistent denial of our parental authority, and accusations that we were harming Emma by restricting her access. The contrast between Natalie's delusional testimony and the comprehensive evidence of her inappropriate behavior created a compelling case for the protection orders we were seeking. Judge Gonzalez's questions during the proceedings demonstrated her understanding of the serious nature of the violations and her concern about Emma's future security if appropriate restrictions were not implemented. The court proceedings also revealed additional evidence of Natalie's inappropriate behavior that had not been previously discovered. During the discovery process, her attorney was required to produce documents that included additional social media posts, financial records, and communication evidence that further demonstrated the extent of her campaign to establish inappropriate control over Emma's life. The newly discovered evidence included attempts to research legal procedures for challenging parental fitness, communications with other family members designed to build support for removing Emma from our care, and financial planning documents that included Emma as though she were Natalie's dependent child rather than our daughter. The comprehensive evidence presented during the court proceedings created an overwhelming case for the protection orders we were seeking, while also supporting the criminal charges that were being pursued simultaneously. The coordination between civil and criminal proceedings demonstrated the serious nature of Natalie's violations and the necessity of comprehensive legal remedies to ensure Emma's future security. Judge Gonzalez's preliminary rulings during the proceedings indicated strong support for our position and recognition of the legitimate concerns we had raised about Natalie's behavior. The court's questions and comments suggested that permanent protection orders would be granted, and that additional restrictions might be implemented to address the various threats Natalie posed to Emma's well-being. The transformation from vulnerable family members seeking to manage inappropriate behavior to confident legal advocates successfully presenting comprehensive evidence in formal court proceedings represented a profound evolution in our approach to protecting Emma. The realization that we possessed the strength, intelligence, and resources necessary to navigate complex legal challenges while maintaining our family's integrity provided powerful validation of our capacity to overcome sophisticated threats through systematic preparation and professional support. The court proceedings demonstrated that individual families could successfully challenge inappropriate behavior by extended family members when they were prepared to document violations comprehensively and pursue appropriate legal remedies. The process had required significant time, energy, and financial resources, but the protection of Emma's future security and our family's autonomy justified every effort we had invested in the comprehensive legal strategy. The motivational impact of successfully presenting our case in formal court proceedings extended beyond the immediate goal of protecting Emma to influence our broader understanding of personal efficacy and the capacity for ordinary people to achieve extraordinary results when defending their families against serious threats. The experience had demonstrated that systematic preparation, professional guidance, and persistent effort could overcome even sophisticated manipulation and deception when the cause was just and the evidence was compelling. The final court hearing on April 15th marked the culmination of 3 months of intensive legal proceedings that would determine Emma's future security and establish permanent consequences for Natalie's systematic campaign of harassment, fraud, and inappropriate interference with our family. Judge Gonzalez had reviewed all evidence presented during the comprehensive evidentiary hearings, considered the professional evaluations from Dr. Williams, and examined the criminal charges that had been filed concurrently with our civil protection case. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, as both legal teams prepared for Judge Gonzalez to deliver her ruling on our petition for permanent protection orders. The comprehensive evidence we had presented demonstrated the serious nature of Natalie's violations and the necessity of legal intervention to protect Emma from continued inappropriate interference. However, family court proceedings involving extended family members required careful consideration of competing interests and the potential impact of restrictions on family relationships. Judge Gonzalez began her ruling by acknowledging the complexity of the case and the difficulty of balancing the protection of parental rights with the preservation of appropriate family relationships. She noted that the evidence presented had established a clear pattern of inappropriate behavior that exceeded normal family relationship challenges and required judicial intervention to ensure Emma's continued well-being and security. The court's analysis of the evidence focused on several key findings that supported the comprehensive protection orders we had requested. Judge Gonzalez specifically cited the psychological evaluation conducted by Dr. Williams, which had documented Natalie's delusional beliefs about her relationship with Emma and her inability to recognize appropriate boundaries. The professional assessment had identified personality patterns that posed ongoing risks to Emma's psychological and physical well-being if Natalie's access were not legally restricted. The criminal evidence of identity theft, financial fraud, and medical consent violations had established that Natalie's behavior extended beyond inappropriate family dynamics to include serious legal violations that warranted both criminal prosecution and civil protection measures. Judge Gonzalez noted that the systematic nature of these violations demonstrated premeditation and planning that indicated ongoing risk to Emma's security if appropriate legal restrictions were not implemented. The court's ruling included a comprehensive permanent restraining order that prohibited Natalie from having any direct or indirect contact with Emma until she reached the age of 18. The order specifically prohibited physical contact, telephone or electronic communication, attempted contact through third parties, and presence at locations where Emma might be expected to appear, including her daycare facility, medical appointments, and family gatherings. The restraining order also included provisions that prohibited Natalie from using Emma's name, image, or personal information on social media platforms or in any public communications. The court recognized that Natalie's systematic misrepresentation of her relationship with Emma on social media had constituted a form of identity appropriation that could affect Emma's reputation and psychological well-being as she grew older. Additionally, the court ordered Natalie to cease all unauthorized use of Emma's personal information, including the immediate closure of the fraudulent bank account that had been opened in Emma's name and the return of any official documents she had obtained without proper parental authorization. The financial restitution component of the ruling required Natalie to compensate our family for legal expenses, investigative costs, and other damages resulting from her inappropriate behavior. Judge Gonzalez also addressed Natalie's counter-allegations about our fitness as parents, noting that the comprehensive evidence presented had demonstrated that Emma was receiving excellent care and was developing normally under our supervision. The court specifically cited the professional assessments from Dr. Chen, the positive evaluations from daycare personnel, and the psychological evaluation findings that documented Emma's secure attachment patterns and our effective parenting capabilities. The court's dismissal of Natalie's fabricated allegations about our parenting provided official validation of our competence and dedication as Emma's parents. Judge Gonzalez noted that the false accusations appeared to be motivated by Natalie's inappropriate desire to establish control over Emma rather than by legitimate concerns about child welfare, and that such fabricated allegations represented an additional form of harassment that justified the comprehensive protection orders being implemented. The ruling also included mandatory psychological treatment requirements for Natalie, with the court ordering her to participate in ongoing therapy focused on boundary recognition, appropriate family relationships, and the psychological issues that had contributed to her delusional beliefs about Emma. The treatment requirement was designed both to address the underlying causes of her inappropriate behavior and to provide professional assessment of any future risk she might pose to Emma's well-being. The psychological treatment mandate included specific requirements for Natalie to demonstrate sustained improvement in her understanding of appropriate family boundaries before any consideration could be given to modifying the restraining order. The court established that such modification would require comprehensive professional evaluation and would only be considered if Emma's best interests could be served by limited, supervised contact under strictly controlled circumstances. Judge Gonzalez concluded her ruling by emphasizing the court's primary responsibility to protect Emma's well-being and ensure her ability to develop in a secure environment free from inappropriate interference or manipulation. The comprehensive nature of the protection orders reflected the court's recognition that Natalie's behavior had posed serious threats to Emma's psychological and physical security that required decisive legal intervention. The immediate impact of the court's ruling was transformative for our family's daily life and long-term security. The comprehensive restraining order provided legal enforcement mechanisms that would prevent any future contact attempts while establishing clear consequences for violations. The official validation of our parenting and the dismissal of Natalie's false allegations provided closure regarding the fabricated accusations that had created additional stress during the legal proceedings. The criminal proceedings that had been coordinated with our civil case reached resolution shortly after the family court ruling, with Natalie accepting a plea agreement that included guilty pleas to multiple charges of identity theft and fraud. The plea agreement required her to pay substantial financial penalties, perform community service, and comply with probation requirements that included continued psychological treatment and strict prohibitions against any contact with our family. The criminal conviction established an official record of Natalie's fraudulent activities and provided additional legal consequences that reinforced the civil protection orders. The coordination between civil and criminal proceedings had created a comprehensive framework of legal restrictions that addressed all aspects of Natalie's inappropriate behavior while providing multiple enforcement mechanisms to ensure Emma's continued protection. The resolution of both civil and criminal proceedings marked the successful conclusion of our legal strategy to protect Emma from inappropriate interference, while establishing permanent consequences for the systematic campaign of harassment and fraud that had threatened our family's security. The comprehensive nature of the legal remedies provided assurance that Emma could grow up without the constant threat of manipulation or inappropriate contact from someone who had refused to respect appropriate family boundaries. However, the most significant aspect of the court proceedings was not simply the legal protection they provided, but the personal transformation they had catalyzed in my understanding of my own capabilities and strength as a mother and advocate for my family. The experience of successfully navigating complex legal challenges while maintaining Emma's daily care and our family's stability had demonstrated reserves of resilience and determination that had not been previously tested. The process of documenting Natalie's inappropriate behavior, coordinating with legal professionals, and presenting comprehensive evidence in formal court proceedings had required skills in investigation, communication, and strategic planning that had developed throughout the crisis. The successful outcome had validated my ability to protect Emma from sophisticated threats, while also establishing my confidence in handling complex challenges that required sustained effort and professional collaboration. The motivational impact of the legal victory extended beyond the immediate protection it provided to Emma. The experience had demonstrated that ordinary families could successfully challenge inappropriate behavior by individuals who possessed superior financial resources, social connections, or manipulative abilities when they were prepared to document violations comprehensively and pursue appropriate legal remedies with professional support. The transformation from a trusting family member who had initially dismissed boundary violations as enthusiasm to a strategic legal advocate who had successfully obtained comprehensive protection orders represented a profound evolution in my understanding of personal agency and the capacity for growth under pressure. The crisis had required me to develop new capabilities while also revealing strengths that had not been previously recognized or utilized. The broader implications of our successful legal strategy provided a model for other families who might face similar challenges involving inappropriate interference by extended family members. The systematic documentation procedures, professional consultation strategies, and comprehensive legal approaches we had employed could serve as a framework for protecting children from various forms of family-related threats that exceeded normal relationship challenges. The experience had also highlighted the importance of trusting maternal instincts and recognizing early warning signs of inappropriate behavior before they escalated to more serious violations. The initial boundary crossings that I had noticed but initially dismissed had been accurate indicators of the more serious problems that developed over time. The lesson reinforced the value of addressing concerns proactively rather than hoping that problematic behavior would resolve naturally. The successful resolution of the legal proceedings had provided closure regarding Natalie's inappropriate behavior while also establishing a foundation for Emma's future security and our family's continued growth and development. The comprehensive protection orders would remain in place throughout Emma's childhood, ensuring that she could develop without the threat of manipulation or inappropriate interference from someone who had demonstrated an inability to respect appropriate boundaries. The peace of mind that resulted from knowing that Emma was legally protected from future interference allowed our family to focus on positive growth and development rather than defensive measures and crisis management. The energy and attention that had been devoted to protecting against Natalie's inappropriate behavior could now be redirected toward creating the nurturing, stable environment that would support Emma's optimal development throughout her childhood. The legal victory had also strengthened the partnership between David and me as parents, as we had successfully collaborated in protecting Emma while maintaining our professional responsibilities and personal relationship. The shared experience of navigating complex challenges had demonstrated our ability to work together effectively under pressure, while maintaining our commitment to Emma's best interests and our family's long-term well-being. The transformation from crisis management to empowered advocacy represented the most significant personal growth outcome of the entire experience. The realization that I possessed the intelligence, strength, and determination necessary to protect Emma from sophisticated threats while maintaining our family's integrity had provided confidence that would serve me well in future personal and professional challenges that might arise throughout my life. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.